seen this morning was when Team Hoyt came through town. And it was incredible because you saw everybody standing up, applauding, screaming, yelling and screaming. You knew they were coming through. And when they came by, he was slowing down and he was saying goodbye to everybody. And that to me was just one of the biggest thrills to see Team Hoyt come by for the last time. So I wish Dick and his son the very best, and thank you for the wonderful memories. And
came across the finish line, they took a picture of Rick. It's the biggest smile you ever saw in your life. And when you get home that night, Rick wrote on his computer, "Dad, when I'm running, it feels like I'm not even handicapped." So that's what got us involved in running.
How do you feel about the Boston Marathon being the 100th anniversary? Being a participant.
It's the biggest road running event in the world. There's just no doubt about it. Boston is the greatest marathon in the world. And to be able to be part of the 100th running of the Boston Marathon, it's great.
Hello and welcome back to Around the Clock. Today we are speaking with Jack LeDuc to help us remember Dick Hoyt. Jack, welcome to Around the Clock.
Thank you, Yolanda. Thanks for having me.
Jack, you have been associated with the marathon for a long time. Tell our viewers, what was your association with the marathon?
Well, it actually started quite innocently. I belonged to a club in Hopkinton, and we wanted to set up a small concession on the common, sell hot dogs and hamburgers and things long before anyone needed, other than just a nominal permission to get out there and sell, just to raise funds for our committee, for our club. And we sent a good friend of mine, Paul Buzzy Buswell, to a meeting of the newly formed at the time Marathon Committee in Hopkinton to find out if we could get a permission to do that. And they said, "Oh, certainly, but you'll have to make a sign." And so he said, "Well, all right." So he came back to me and he said, "They said we can do it, but we have to make a sign." I said, "Well, we're going to make a sign anyway." He says, "No, not a sign for our stand, a sign for Johnny Kelly, who was going to be celebrating his 50th Boston Marathon at the time." So I thought, well, where do I begin? So it started with just a simple sign on top of what is now 1 Ash Street, which is owned by the Boston Athletic Association, and that said simply, "Hopkinton honors Johnny Kelly on his 50th Boston Marathon run."
So Jack,
And
what year was that?
1981.
Okay.
And then, when all was said and done, everybody was thrilled because they didn't have the budget to have someone make the sign. So it was all a volunteer. Mm-hmm. And after that, they said, "Well, we're inviting you to thank you to the Marathon Committee. We have a wrap-up meeting. We'd like to talk to you and thank you." And I said, "Okay." They said, "Would you consider joining our Marathon Committee?" I said, "Well, I'm not a resident of town. Be a little awkward to have a committee member not a resident of town." They said, "No, that's all right. What else do you think you can do for us?" I said, "Well, I could dress up the start line," because up until then it was just a white line across the road. So the very first few were very basic, just like the Johnny Kelly sign, but it morphed into, tried to keep it topical.
Jack, it's interesting how you started in regards to working with that committee. What did you move on to do next?
Well, after I painted the line for, I don't know, let's say 15 years, the opportunity came up that needed an announcer to fill in for the announcer that had been doing it for years, Harold Rathburn. He was getting sick, and they needed someone the following year. So I said, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." It wasn't really scripted. It was pretty much say it like you see it. And it went off pretty well. So I've been doing that ever since 1996 at the intersection of 85 and 135, and then 97 right at the start line. And I've had several co-announcers. And I have insisted that the co-announcer be a woman because 50% or sometimes more than 50% of the field are women. So they should get a voice in it too. And so it's worked out well.
Nice. So one of the reasons we've brought you on is as such a large member and participant in doing things for the marathon is the remembrance of Dick Hoyt.
Yeah.
Can you tell us some things that you remember about Dick as part of the marathon?
Well, obviously the marathon's probably the most celebrated event that he's done because A, he did a number of them, I believe 36, and B, it's so well known. It's the oldest continuous marathon in the world. And he was certainly a crowd favorite. But beyond, the athleticism that Dick showed the world, it was his humanitarianism. When Rick was born, they wanted to institutionalize him, and he wouldn't hear of it. Him and his wife said, "No, we're going to raise our son like we raised the other two." And he did just that. And Rick asked him one day if he could be an athlete, and Dick didn't know where to begin. But the story goes that he said, well, let's enter a race and see how we do. So they started with just a basic hospital wheelchair and completed, I believe it was a 5K, it could have been a 10K. And it just went on from there. But beyond the marathon, he's done several triathlons, some of them iron distance, Ironman. It's 2.25 miles swim in the open ocean, 112-mile bike ride, and a full marathon to finish. And to someone with just themselves, it's hard enough to complete. But he had to do that with no assistance. So he'd come out of the water after swimming, have to put Dick in a specially made bicycle in front of him, do the 112-mile bike ride, step off the bicycle, and then put him in a different appliance, and they would do a full marathon together. It was just, to me, it's amazing. The man was like I said, a humanitarian, but he was also an athlete, and he was very humble. They had to kind of prod him to write a book, and he wrote a book, and he would be at book signings, and he was just like the star that lit up the room. He was really something else. Great guy.
I had the opportunity to meet him once, and as you said, he was very humble, and he always talked about how it was a team with him and his son. It wasn't him, it was him and Rick. And it's great that they have the statue in Hopkinton that memorializes what they've done together. And as you said, he's been a true humanitarian. He's donated and he's done a lot for a lot of different people.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the fate of that statue is, if it'll stay in front of the center school, because obviously the center school is vacant and the town hasn't really decided what to do with the building. They wanted it close to the start line. And in fact, for the past several years, all of the wheelchair and hand cycle entrants would gather at the center school. That's why they placed it there. It's sort of a monument to all of the folks that do the marathon to cover the distance with wheels. So
Right.
There is a statue at the 1 mile mark. There's a statue of Johnny Kelly right before Heartbreak Hill. And this statue sort of, memorializes Dick, but more importantly, all of the folks with disabilities that compete in the sport.
Right. Well, Jack, thank you for coming on Around the Clock. As I was thinking about this interview, I remember one of the first times I met you was at the start line. You were painting the start line in Hopkinton. I think it was 2017. No, 2014, we said. So
Okay.
it was cool to see that happening. And I remember bringing friends from across, from another country, and his dad was a marathoner, and he had to run across the Boston Marathon starting line when he came to visit. And so it's been memorialized not only here, but across the world. So,
a quick story. When I was in the service, our ship tied up in Japan at 3 ports. And we see the locals, and they were very curious. Where are you from? And I said, a little town outside of Boston. Where's that? And I said, Hopkinton. Oh, Boston Marathon. Even though I mentioned Boston, it wasn't until I said Hopkinton that they realized, it's become the holy grail of running, obviously. It's the most coveted race of all. And it's known around the world. And it's funny, at the 100th, it had snowed the Wednesday before the 100th marathon. We had 8, 9, 10 inches of wet, heavy snow that covered the ground. And we knew it was so late in the season, it would ultimately melt. But I was scheduled to paint the start line that day. Now, this is the 100th Boston Marathon. I had worked a lot on the design and the execution. And I thought, what am I going to do? The race is a few days away. So anyway, long story short, I was painting the finish line at the time. So I went into Boston, painted the finish line, came back on Sunday, the day before the race, to paint the start line. And of course, the tourists are all lined up. They were coming in by the busload. And we started spraying the people's feet with the blue paint that, the runners wanted some of the blue paint from the start line on their shoes. And we said, well, it's a donation of $1 toward the committee. And I don't remember what we raised. It wasn't a lot, but it was just a novelty of it. They'd come up and they stick their foot right in front. Yeah. So, I've got thousands of stories like that. It's just it's a feel-good event, and made better for me by the fact that I'm happy to do it, and I'm a volunteer, have been for this many times, and but getting back to Dick, he will be missed. The whole running community is really mourning right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jack, thank you so much for coming on Around the Clock and sharing your marathon stories, but also your stories of Dick, because I think, as you said, the whole marathon world, as you know, a lot of people are mourning his passing.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Yolanda. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, Jack. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for being on Around the Clock. Hello and welcome to Around the Clock. I'm your host, Yolanda Greaves. Today we are speaking with Doug Small, the director of our Public Works Department. Doug, welcome back to Around the Clock.
Hi, Yolanda. Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
It's been a little while since we've had you on, and we might have some new viewers. So before we get into the project that we're going to talk about, let's talk a little bit about you, Doug. Lived most of your life here in Ashland. What else do you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up in Ashland. I worked a few summers for the DPW in high school, and left. Went on to college, and eventually I worked for the state, for Mass Highway, who's now Mass DOT, for about 10 years, and then a job opened up in Ashland for the highway superintendent. I think back when Jimmy Lefter was here, so I got the job. Fortunately, I got the job. So I put in about 8 to 10 years as the highway superintendent, and then eventually I became director during that time. And then I left service for the town. I left the job for about 4 years to go to work for my father in electronics, and then he ended up selling the company, and it turned out this job opened up again. So fortunately, I was able to get back in here. So I've been back now for about 4 years now.
Nice, nice. And we are thankful to have you back. You know Ashland so well.
And I'm thankful to be back, believe me. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
We have you here to talk about the Route 126 project. When was the first time that you remember talking to someone about redeveloping and recreating the roads on 126?
Yeah, I think it was sometime, around 2007, 2008 or so. And it was probably with Ed Bates. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Sarah Hines, she was probably involved, knowing her. And then Yolanda, eventually came into the picture, of course, and so did Paula Parker. But I think it was with Ed Bates is when we started really pursuing this, projects with the state.
I remember reading an article probably around 08 or 09 about, they were going to do it. Once I stepped on once I got elected as a select board member, as select boards, we always try to pick projects or pick things that we can champion.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing about Route 126. So it's, I've been on the board now 9 years. So it's been a project that's been going on for a while.
Right.
So it's nice to finally see it starting.
Yeah, no.
For you, though, now that it's starting, what does that mean in regards to what you're having to manage and what the project's going to look like for the next few years?
Yeah, if you don't mind, before I get into that, it's just growing up in Ashland over near Route 126. That was kind of where, in middle school years and all this stuff in early high school, that's where my friends and I would kind of, that'd be like our area and all this stuff. And I don't think many people know there are no sidewalks on Route 126. And
Right.
There was actually a time where one of my friends actually got hit by a bike taking his bike down to, back in the day, it might've been Mammoth Mart or something like that down there, or Badino. Wow. Down where Market Basket is today. But so that corridor is it's a long time coming for this project, and it's we'll get into what it'll be like. But as far as how does it affect us now, the DPW, even though this is a state job, it's a $20 million state job. A portion of this job is actually town funded. It's for the streetlights. Right. I think it's like $1.3 million. Even though it's a state job, we are plugged in. We, being the DPW staff, are plugged into this project daily because for many reasons. One, the water and sewer utilities; those are our utilities under the road there, and the other thing it would be for traffic control. and then stormwater, environmental issues, things like that. So it's even though it's a state job, a portion of our daily duties is part of that job, overseeing it, locating the water mains and the sewer mains, and and I think the biggest part of this, one of the biggest parts, is communication. Is making sure the residents along Route 126 are aware of what's going on. It's amazing. We have Ashland. There's a tremendous amount of people that live in that area, that live in the condos. It's actually I think it's like 30% of the residential units in Ashland are condos. It's a substantial number, and so of course we have Spyglass Hill,
Yep.
Up there, and there are hundreds of units up there, maybe close to 1,000, and then you also have Captain Eames in Algonquin, where there's another 1,000 or so, houses or condos there, and then
Right.
just around the corner we have Mountain Gate, Leland, and Meeting House Path. So Beth Reynolds and I have been working closely together as far as getting the information out to the people as best we can, because that's half the battle. If everybody's aware of what's going on out there, it'll reduce a lot of the frustration. People will know, school buses will know when to get in and out of there. So, but just so everybody knows, if they want to sign up for weekly notifications, just go to ashlandmass.com, okay, and then go to the Department of Public Works page, and there's a way. The very first page, there's a way to actually. It's update. There's an update there with the schedule and what's going on with the program, and there's also a way to sign up for weekly emails where you'll get an email directly from us.
Nice. So tell us, what's the main things that what are the main things that are changing on that corridor that people are going to see once the project's done?
So something like this. So we're a project like this. First of all, it's from the Holliston town line all the way to the Framingham town line. It's a 2.1 mile corridor right there. We're going to be. They are going to be installing sidewalks and a bike lane. So in order to do so, they need to widen the road. So the first thing they need to do is they need to do the tree trimming and remove some trees. So along with that, the next big piece to that is actually going to be relocating the utility poles. So there are approximately 70 utility poles that will have to be relocated. And each utility pole has multiple utility companies on it, from Eversource to Comcast to Light Tower. So that's going to take quite a bit of time just to do that. So we're going to see the corridor widened at first, and people will be like, oh my word, So that's a big piece. The other there are many big pieces. So the traffic lights are all going to be updated out there. We're going to have new traffic lights at Elliott Street, Route 126. There are going to be new traffic lights down at Market Basket. And then there's a brand new set of lights going in at Algonquin and Dunkin' Donuts and Sewell Street at that intersection. In order to do that, the state is going to realign Algonquin, so it's more of a 90-degree to Route 126. It's more of a geometrically lined up properly, with Sewell Street. So we're going to see a brand new set of lights over there as well. The other thing we're going to see out there eventually are a couple retaining walls. So you're going to see, as you're pulling in from Holliston on the right-hand side before you get to Spyglass, you're going to see a retaining wall holding the hill up a little bit there for the condos. Yep. And then there's also going to be one on the left across from the gas station by Elliott Street. So in between is going to be this new roundabout.
Right. And the idea, it was interesting being part of the Pond Street Working Group since I've been on the select board and following and championing this project, that just the discussion about the roundabout and how people perceive it. I think it's going to be a positive thing. I think it's going to slow traffic down. I think it's going to make it easier for people trying to cross there and people trying to walk there.
Yeah, as you and I know, if you're pulling out of Shaw's and you want to take a left onto Route 126,
yeah,
I hope you have 20 minutes, and you're available to pull out safely,
20 minutes or a lead foot.
Right. So the roundabouts have come a long ways in the last 15 years. So I think it's going to be a great addition. We looked at putting traffic lights out there. That's a problem because it was too close to the other existing set of lights at Elliott Street. But the roundabout will make it safer to cross the street if you're a pedestrian. The way they're setting this thing up. And I used to live on the other side of Route 126 on the Sherborne end, and you take your life in your hands cutting across Route 126. So hopefully getting over to Shaw's or getting over to that area will be a lot safer than it is today. With this roundabout, hopefully some improvements at the intersection itself at Elliott and Route 126.
Yeah, I think there's some light changes coming, so it'll make it easier to make the left onto Elliott. Because right now that's a little crazy.
Yes. Can you imagine this corridor? Can you imagine when it's done with these streetlights? It's always been such a dark area. You get down past, in between Algonquin and Market Basket. It's just dark,
Yep.
and this whole thing's going to be lit up, and you're going to have some beautiful sidewalks. In the bike lane, it's really it's going to be worth it in the long run. Unfortunately, it's going to take us a couple of years to get there.
Yeah. I think right now we don't have final dates, but we're thinking we've heard till about spring of 24. So it's going to be about a 3-year project. As you said, these things take time though. I think, as you said, in the end, it's going to become a walkable and bikeable corridor.
Yeah.
And businesses, we have a couple of empty lots. I think some businesses then are going to say, okay,
right,
it's worth me coming and investing here. So.
Yeah, it's, it's almost like Ashland is, we've always kind of focused downtown, the downtown area, Stone Park and all that. And it's nice to see this section of town get this attention. And it's, the other thing is, it's really important that we mention Paula Parker and Ed Bates, Sarah
Hines. Yep.
Sarah Hines, yourself, of course, Yolanda, you've been terrific through this. Paula Parker is tenacious. She's just, whenever there was a lull, all of a sudden she just started rattling cages at the state and just, she was, for us to be breaking ground this year, if it wasn't for Paula, it'd probably be another 8 years. But Paula she did a terrific job getting everybody's attention.
She definitely is a true champion. And of course, Ed Bates starting it all those years ago. I think
absolutely
it's one of those things that people don't think about, that these projects like this don't just happen.
No.
They take a while to get done, and then you have to do all the planning. I remember so many meetings at the Warren Elementary School in that cafeteria, moving little cars and people and getting the public involved. But it's been, 4 years since we've really talked about all that, since the design and engineering. The design and engineering has been working, but I think our last real Pond Street Working Group meeting was almost a year and a half ago. And we worked to get the lighting in the budget so that we didn't just have poles, electric poles. We had nice lighting on that corridor. So
the town of Ashland voted to fund this project, to fund the design, to fund these streetlights. The town of Ashland, the residents in Ashland, good for you. This is great.
Right.
This is a town, even though it's a state job. It's really a town project because it started from the town. And poor Ed Bates, this guy's been waiting forever and ever and ever. I hope we name this round something to do with
something. The Ed Bates roundabout.
Give him a crosswalk or something. The Bates crosswalk. I don't know, something. The Ed Bates roundabout. I don't know, but poor Ed has been waiting forever and ever and ever. And this is great for the town of Ashland. And everybody deserves credit. There are state people that deserve credit here.
Oh, yeah.
Over in District 3, Ann Sullivan, we talked about earlier, Arthur Frost, Barry and Lorian, the director over there, in the state. And I'm sure Senator Spilka has been involved in all this. And of course, all the town managers that have been involved over the years as well. So, and the select board, of course, but this is a town, even though it's a state job, it's a town project, and
Right.
good for Ashland. That whole section of town is going to be redefined. The sidewalks are going to be great. People are going to be able to walk safely from Algonquin up to Shaw's or down to Market Basket, or it's good for us. Good
Or
for
to a
us.
restaurant, right? We have Mozzie's at one end, we have Ale House at the other, we have a couple of smaller ones in between.
Right.
So,
Right. Good
well, Doug, it's always great talking to you. Thank you for coming on. I'm sure we'll bring you on again as this project moves forward, so you can keep giving us some updates. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd love to. No, this is great, Yolanda. And like I said, you're a huge part of this as well. So thank you. And just before I go, I just want to say congratulations to David Foster for retiring and all this. And he will well, we're not going to miss him because I'm sure he's still going to be around.
I don't think he's going too far. I think we'll be able to rope him into something. Thank you so much, Doug. Keep doing all the great work that you're doing as our Public Works Director, and we look forward to more updates on Route 126.
www.ashlandmass.com. Go to the Department of Public Works, and boom, you can sign up for weekly notifications. Thank you, Yolanda.
Sounds good. Thanks, Doug. Take care. And we'll be back with more Around the Clock. Is over on Union Street, where the clearing has started for the public safety building. The work has started getting some trees cut down, putting some protective barriers up, and then they'll start looking at doing some blasting. At their meetings, they've been talking about what they need to do with our fire department to make sure that the blasting is done safely as this project moves forward. If you'd like to be kept up to date, you can make sure you follow the Public Safety Building on their Facebook page as they post updates on a regular basis. Hello and welcome to the Select Board update for the meeting that happened on Wednesday, March 17th. We started our meeting at 7 p.m. with citizens' participation. We had a few citizens bring up some projects and some issues that we will be looking to address at future meetings. We then went into a history lesson from Cliff Wilson to celebrate Ashland's 175th birthday. Unfortunately, his visuals were not showing, but he was able to take us through the history and how we became incorporated on March 16th of 1846. If you'd like to hear that, you can go ahead and watch the full Select Board meeting. From there, we went into a celebration or recognition of David Foster's retirement. We read a Select Board proclamation talking about all the great things that he's done, as well as the Select Board members and other members in the community thanked him and remembered all that he has done as an employee of Ashland, but more importantly, as a volunteer and resident. We wish him well on his retirement. From there, we went into a presentation of an ADA, American for Disabilities Act, self-evaluation and transition plan for about 10 buildings here in Ashland. We looked at 4 of our public buildings, 4 of our school buildings, and some of our public buildings, as well as some of our parks and recreation areas. And then they looked at some streets. The full presentation can be watched on the Select Board meeting, and the plan will be presented and available up on the website. It was a great discussion. There are some good things that we're doing here in Ashland, but also some areas that need improvement to help those with disability to participate fully in activities here in Ashland. From there, we reviewed and approved our consent agenda. From there, we moved into our old and new business. There was an update on the Eversource. There will be a hearing coming up from the Siting Board. All that information is on the Siting Board's website, and there will be a notification of the public hearing that will be happening in April. From there, we discussed the timeline for our annual town meeting. Town meeting will be happening on Saturday, June 12th, and we're looking at a start time of 1 o'clock because I believe June 12th is going to be the first day of the Ashland Farmers Market. From there, we discussed the possibility of a tri-board meeting. Tri-board is the school board, the school committee, the planning board, and the select board. We have those meetings typically annually to discuss the budget. We're going to push the meeting out probably till about end of April or May before town meeting, so we can have some more information from the new CARES Act funding that is coming through from the federal government. We then talked about the date of the annual town election. That is the third Tuesday in May, which I believe is the 18th this year. We are not going to change it. We've shown that our town clerk's office can handle an election during a pandemic. There was some good news at the state level in that they have pushed out the emergency orders allowing absentee/mail-in voting to happen, as well as early voting to happen for town elections. So be on the lookout for information on that as we head into the election in May. We then discuss the timeline and the start of our town managers and town councils review. It's that time of year. We will be starting the town managers review as of April 1st and plan to have it wrapped up and presented at our first meeting in May. And then we will be doing the town councils review shortly after that. We discussed the timing of our volunteer breakfast. It's going to be happening via Zoom on April 10th. So if you've received those, if you're a volunteer and you've received the invitation before, look out for that invitation in your email. We then set the date for a public hearing on a permanent easement. So through the whole project of Robert Hill, the Robert Hill project, the housing off of Independence Lane, there was discussion that the town was going to work with the Robert Hill Way project and put in a booster pump to help with the water supply. Because of how the land is owned, where the booster pump is going to go, we actually need to do a eminent domain taking hearing, and that will be happening in May. From there, we went into our priority project updates, Rail Transit District. Not too many changes up there, except that the project for the Trolley Brook Trail the Trolley Brook Trail project has been passed through conservation. It is out, part of it are out for the RFP, and hopefully we'll be seeing work starting there soon. Downtown, also the project is moving forward. We're finalizing some information and working with the MBTA to get some, to do our undergrounding of the utilities under the train tracks through downtown Ashland. That work should be starting sometime early spring. Public safety and Mendez. Public safety, they've started clearing ground over on Union Street where the public safety building is going to go. Mendez is moving forward with reviewing their working with conservation as well as hiring a project manager. Warren District and Valentine Estate, no real new business, new information at our meeting last night, but a further discussion of what we want to do with Valentine. We're probably going to be getting a last update from the current makeup of the Valentine Committee at our next meeting at the beginning of April, and then we'll make some decisions after that. The Route 126 project, as you see as you drive by, there are trees coming down and work getting done. If you want to be kept up to date on what's going on, you can go to ashlandmass.com, go to the DPW's page, and sign up for weekly emails to let you know what is happening. There's also electronic signboards as you head into that area on Elliott Street to let you know what is going on. And of course, there's all kinds of information on the website about that Route 126 project. And that was our priority project updates. We then moved into the town manager report, COVID update, and vaccinations. Mostly we talked about vaccinations, how we were able to do a clinic here at the community center for some of our seniors and teachers. And then we also talked about that if you have not signed up for the portal that at the state level, where you can put your name in and you will then be notified when vaccine becomes available for your group, depending on what phase you're in. We reviewed some of the budget items under our general fund budget and enterprise funds. Things are looking fairly good. There is a slight shortage, but we are looking at how we can make that up. Also, the town manager has recommended that we take less from our rainy day fund this year, and we are waiting to make final decisions until we have a little bit more information from what will be coming through the CARES Act, as well as what we'll be seeing from the state budget. And then we wrapped up just by the quick discussion on our cable renewal process. Our cable contracts are coming up for renewal, and we'll be working to see what we need to do there to renew the contracts for the next few years. It was a long meeting. I feel it was a productive meeting. If you hung in there with us till the end, it was about 11 o'clock. Those meetings don't always happen. But again, it was a good, productive meeting. And that is the update for the select board meeting that happened on Wednesday, March 17th.